So big hearty hello and welcome from Nicholas D. Castella, the Australian Breathwork College. I'm delighted to have you with us for this core clearing breathwork calibration session. And I've been a full-time breathwork practitioner for 34 years now and been training practitioners since 1999, every year running trainings. And thanks to the COVID lockdown, we now have evolved a very elegant and sophisticated breathwork process that helps people get below all the thoughts in their mind, connect into their body, process the emotional baggage that we're carrying, connect into our heart so that we can live from the peace and love and happiness that's within us and move out into the world with more kindness, compassion, gratitude, generosity, and courage. So, this session is a little bit different from what I normally do because most of my work is experiential. This is a little bit more on the informative side, and it's important, and it's something that I don't, up until now, talk a lot about because, in a way, calibrating the breath is an intuitive thing ultimately that we do. And the more that you practice facilitating breathwork sessions, the more you will instinctively calibrate the breath. And it's really important to know how to do that. And I think that change happens when we experience what is. And so bringing awareness to our breath changes how we breathe just by itself. And so bringing awareness to how we're calibrating our breath and how we're calibrating the breath for our clients changes how we breathe. And all of our work, because it's heart-centered, is underpinned by a basic trust in the goodness of life, that there's a natural tendency in life towards health and happiness and healing and aliveness that happens when we become present in the moment and in our body, get out all the stories in our head, and surrender to the process. And the breath is the catalyst for that transformation to happen. And the superpowers of the breath are that they bring us in the present moment. As soon as you focus on your breath, you're in the here and now. The breath energizes us, so it brings us alive, and it also creates flow for healing and transformation to happen in. And so uh, those are the superpowers of the breath. And then we're going to dig into, well, how do we modulate our breath and work with clients in a wholesome, supportive way? And what's the pitfalls that can happen in that if you don't? So the central theme for this whole session, if there's one takeaway that I'd like to instill, is that there's no such thing as the best breathing technique, right? Instead, there's only the most appropriate breathing technique for this person, for this nervous system, for this moment, right? So, because it's all changing all the time. So, the art of heart-centered breathwork is really about learning how to calibrate, not just simply guide a mechanical breathing practice, right? It's about a whole nother level. So before I go too far, I like to get the announcements out of the way. So just a couple of coming events that you might be interested in. On Saturday night is an auspicious occasion. The 8th of the 8th is known as the Lion's Gate. And on that occasion, the Earth, the Sun, and Sirius all line up in a straight line. And that has a tradition of being associated with regeneration and manifestation. And these traditions go back to ancient Egyptian times. So we're having a special evening on Saturday night to set some intentions for the second half of the year and manifest what you'd love to create this year. So I'd love to have you to come to that. I know Brian will put the links in the chat if you would like to join us for that. On Saturday week, the 16th of August, we have a core clearing breathwork day This is the first in-person 3D day that we've run since the COVID lockdown. So people, including myself, getting more bold about coming out and connecting again. So these are really beautiful days of heart connection and heart opening. We really get into the juice of love, really, and do some healing work in there. We're having this in the city, in the centre of the city, in the Victoria Hotel. So if you're interested in that, there'll be a link in the chat in a sec for that as well. And then if you're interested in becoming a breathwork practitioner coach, then we're doing an in-person version of our training. Again, the first one that we've ever run, and it'll be hybrid, so we'll be projecting it online for people all around the world to be able to join, and that's Saturday and Sunday, the 12th and 13th of September. So if you've already done the training and you want to come and do it in person, then have a chat to us and we'll give you a heavily discounted refresher rate to have you there. Also, for those in our community, I just want to mention we have a whole new rendition in response to the survey that we just did, where people were asking for more opportunities to connect and swap sessions with each other and get more access to mentoring. And so I've made available the first Tuesday night of each month. So that means people that are working the day can get there for the mentoring sessions. That coming soon. And if you're becoming a breathwork coach, probably your next step after this is to download a breathwork career guide and to book a private one-on-one session with Moa. And we'll get together, work out where you're at, what you want, what could be holding you back, and the pathway to getting there. So I'd love to have you for that. If this is your first time to this space, just a few little pieces about me. As I said, I've been a breathwork practitioner for a long time. I was an elite athlete in my youth, and I have a passion for exploring human potential. And so, the beautiful thing about breathwork is we turn our attention to our inner game and explore how open can we have a heart, how rich can our life be, how fulfilling can we be, and how much service and love can we bring to the world. And on that front, I'm very blessed to have my beautiful wife Susan as part of the gig in here and our life. We've been together for about 30 years now, and brought two beautiful young souls into the world. And we both share a passion for breathwork, for healing, for growth, and for living life to the fullest. We have a healing center in Clifton Hill, which is where I'm at right now. And we've just been following our heart and lived an amazing life. We have also a retreat center in the Dandenong Ranges in Sassafras, where we run our 3.5 day residential workshops. And up there, it's just like heaven because towering rainforest, fern trees over your head, misty mornings. It's just beautiful and fresh and very alive. I spend a lot of my time giving presentations. This is me at the Australasian Integrative Medical Association's national gathering. And so our work is highly professional, highly respected, and my purpose, my mission is to help awaken a heart-connected humanity. I believe that humanity is in the process of evolution, and the personal, social, and global problems that we're seeing on the planet at the moment are all the birthing pains that are pushing us to wake up to the fact that we're all connected. And breathwork is a major modality that brings us back into relationship, helps us to connect to ourselves, to the peace and love and happiness inside, to connect to each other through that presence, and then connect back into the earth. And I think that we need to come back into relationship in order to evolve and not devolve. So yes, I've created my dream life following my heart. I trained originally as an architect, and in 1992, I left that career and started doing rebirthing breath work. My mum sent a parish priest around at that point to see if I was devil worshipping, and I just really followed my heart and have lived a dream life. And so Now, my role is mentoring and training and passing the baton on of what I've learned and the skills and practice and understandings on how to facilitate breathwork sessions and help people to heal and grow. So that's my purpose now is to train practitioners to bring breathwork to the world and help humanity to evolve. And there is probably never been a better time to become a breathwork practitioner because the health and wellness industry in itself is booming, absolutely booming and expanding. Breathwork is the most popular healing modality on the planet at the moment. And so you can create a sustainable and rewarding career with breathwork. Breathwork is fantastic for helping people release stress and anxiety, and we are witnessing alarming levels of that in adults and in youth now. So there's never been more need for breathwork, and breathwork is being scientifically validated. So you're on solid ground these days, and it's a great practice to bring into other healing modalities. We have psychologists, doctors, counselors, naturopaths, yoga teachers, meditation, energy healers, Reiki, life coaches, personal trainers, all across the board, and people just switching across from being accountants and lawyers and all kinds of things. So this we're having a lot of fun bringing breathwork to the world. One of the things that happens when something becomes a fad is the cowboys often get onto it. And there's actually a lot of cowboys in the breathwork space now. And one of the things about that is breathwork is a beautiful, simple breathing practice. And so it can be deceptive. And people sometimes don't realize the complications that can happen by facilitating certain breathing practices without proper training. And I just thought I'd mention at the start five potential dangers of calibration. And I get feedback from a lot of people, and I'm hearing this feedback these days from people doing breathwork sessions that were not properly facilitated. And it really hurts me because I love breathwork and it's my baby. It's a thing that I do. And so when it's not properly facilitated and people end up becoming re-traumatized through it, it's really hard. And so just want to mention some of the common challenges that people face by doing breath work with people that are not properly trained to be facilitators, not registered trainers. Emotional flooding is a big one. So, because the breath opens us up and activates our emotions, sometimes people become overwhelmed with the intensity of the emotion and they end up, especially in big group breathwork sessions, I hear this feedback a lot, is they come out of the session not feeling fully integrated. Trauma has been activated, but they haven't actually integrated it. And so they go out having been all stirred up, but not actually being sorted out in that way and not having the integration. Another danger of unprofessional facilitated breathwork is dissociation. So, too much calming for somebody already shut down means that they just stay disconnected. And I'm going to look at the flip side of this coin, so it's not all bad news, but I just want to highlight some of the challenges that can happen when we don't calibrate breathwork according to the person and the situation. Anxiety escalation. So this is one that I hear feedback. It's linked into emotional flooding. Is sometimes when people are doing the dynamic rapid breathing practices, when they're not integrated enough to be able to process that emotion, they end up with more anxiety than they started the session with. Emotional bypassing. So calming techniques, suppressing emotions that need expression, right? So just doing cognitive based bypassing of kind of look on the bright side, cheer up, get over it, get yourself together, reframing, things like that. Positive thinking is all part of disconnecting from the emotion that needs to be processed so we can be more present and connected in our life. And then the bottom level of all of this, in many ways, is losing trust, right? So clients instinctively know when they aren't being met, their needs are not being met, and so they learn distrust instead of more trust. And my heart keeps getting opened by the people in our community as just the love that's around and that safety net of support where people reach out to people that are struggling and just think it's such a beautiful thing to have a community in a world that's very fractured and isolated these days. So it's a really important part of our community to help people to learn to trust again and to connect and to grow together. So I recommend that you always check before you do a breathwork session if your breathwork facilitator is professionally trained and registered. Are they actually registered or they just learnt this in a workshop? That's enough said on all that. So, how do we work with this calibration, right? So, in nature, in a herd of horses, when one horse gets dysregulated, which means it gets agitated, it gets in fight or flight, it gets disturbed, the other horses in the herd come around it and they bring it back into a state of calm and harmony. That process of bringing the horse back to calm and harmony is what we call co-regulated. And the beautiful model for this is the individual gives to the herd and the herd gives to the individual. I think this is just a lovely analogy for a community and a healthy society where we contribute to the society or community and then the community gives back to us and holds us in that space. So co-regulation helps us to switch from fight or flight or freeze or fawn, which we're going to talk about more in a moment, which is all that red light sympathetic nervous system activation into a state of connection and trust, which is linked more to the parasympathetic. So in heart-centered breath work, we calibrate using our own introception and extroception for self and co-regulation. What that means is that when we're facilitating sessions for other people, and that could be as a mum or a dad with a child just being there, we're tuning in to our own inner landscape and we're reading what our body feedback is giving us as useful information about the relationship that we're holding. So that process of being self-aware and feeling your inner landscape of sensations and emotions is valuable content. And in fact, when we are connected to another person, what's going on in our body is definitely always linked to what's going on in their body. And so there's a level of communication and connection that happens that's not cognitive. It's not about what we're thinking about, it's what's going on in our body. And so with heart and breath work, we teach people how to self-regulate, how to bring themselves into a space of harmony and peace and balance and love so that they can hold that space for others, which is called co-regulating. A really important part of calibrating because it's not just a scientific, heady kind of a thing you do. It's a way of being present with someone else. So, heart centered breathwork and calibrating is all about being more present, both in ourselves as practitioners, but also with our clients. Our goal, in a way, if there is any goal, is to help our clients to be more present with themselves, to be more in touch, to deepening their connection and helping our clients to make friends with the experience that's rising in their body in the present moment. Right? Sounds simple, but when it's anger, making friends with your anger, making friends with anxiety, making friends with grief can be a bit of a process. And so our role as facilitators is to help our clients to make friends with the whole gamut of human experience. When we do that, we open the door to self-love, right? So many of us are on this story of, I love myself when I get the stuff sorted. Like, you know, when I make peace with my mom, my brother, my sister, my this and that, ex and whatever, but you know, or get my own stuff totally together. But you know, that we're all a work in process. So that's an ongoing journey. And if you're waiting for that to you kind of love yourself, you're probably going to be waiting for a while. And we have a totally different model that we work with, which is instead of trying to get everything together and get everything sorted, our goal in our heart-centered breathwork is how can we find a way of being at peace and loving and accepting ourselves as we are? So that's, if there's a goal, that's really the goal. And then what that does, ironically, is it helps us to show up in the world at our best. So when we're processing, we're allowing the process of breath work to unfold naturally and organically. So, breathwork techniques don't always give clients what they need to feel safe and supported and able to heal. So, we can get too bound into the technique. Are they getting it right? Or am I giving them, you know, maybe not asking, but just giving them a technique without really thinking about what's the purpose of this and what's the outcome going to be for that? And is this the right technique to be giving someone right now? So our philosophy is more is not better. It's a big one in our heart center community that breathing harder and faster is not necessarily quicker human growth because pushing creates resistance and resistance causes pain and pain causes contraction and contraction causes us to get stuck, right? So heart-centered breathwork practitioners, and I'm talking to the guys here listening to this that are facilitators, what we're always trying to do is find the sweet spot for healing and transformation, that where the growth and the integration can happen gently and effortlessly. So that means without goals, without agendas, without pushing, without forcing change to happen. And the irony in that is actually the fastest way to move forward. Right. So slow is smooth and smooth is fast is how we go. And really, this one page characterizes probably most clearly our heart-centered approach and how it's different from setting up a goal. I'm going to have a breakthrough. I'm going to smash it out. I'm going to clear this, get to that. I'm going to have a lightning bolt from God come down and strike me. Hallelujah. Instead, it's much more boring than that. It's like, how can I be present to this experience that wants to unfold through me in the moment and trusting in that process that that's the nature of life, that we're being loved and supported by life, and that's that natural tendency towards peace and happiness and wholeness that happens when we let go of control and allow the process to unfold in its own unique way. So the calibration process itself has a number of different factors that we're taking into account so that we can really meet our clients where they're at and support them in the best way. So we're going to go into these in a bit more detail in a second. So I'm going to map these out so that you're aware of them. And I think I'll kind of round this off at the end, but ultimately the calibration process in breathwork is intuitive, but that intuitive process is informed by education. It's informed by knowledge. It's informed by understanding the principles that we're working with. And then the decisions that you'll make are interoceptive. They're beyond, below thinking. They're your body's response. And they're going to come from understanding what you're considering and being well educated in this area, which is why we run trainings, right? To give you all that. So the client's personality time, their history, right? I'm going to go into these in more detail in a sec. The nervous system state that they're in the moment, the stage that they're in the breathwork session. So the breathing practice, the pattern of breathing changes during a session, and the way they're breathing from moment to moment, in fact, is giving feedback, right? So the first question to ask in a session is who's actually sitting in front of you? Every client arrives with a nervous system shaped by genetics, temperament, attachment, life experiences. So there's definitely not one size fits all here. And there's a number of different personality styles that we can put together here and see how to respond to them in a healthy way. So, sensitive and receptive people, moi here, highly sensitive people, HSPs, empaths, deep feeling healers, creatives, and intuitives, the kind of needs that they have in a session is for safety, for gentleness, and permission to slow down, just to relax, because we can get a bit frenetic, a bit hyper, a bit activated. And these kinds of people often suffer from anxiety because they haven't been trained how to process the emotion that they feel so intensely getting activated in their everyday life. And this men and women, it's not separate, it's the same for both. The second kind of personality type is the hyper responsible ones, the high achievers, the perfectionists, the career helpers, the ones that like set that bar so high. And really, their the greatest needs are letting go, learning to receive instead of giving to everybody else, and learning to be kind and gentle and practice self compassion. Because often the bar is set so high that we don't ever get there. And when it comes to breath work, these kinds of people are going to be wanting to smash it out, wanting to, you know, uh, get the breakthrough, bust through to something. And strangely enough, that pushing actually disconnects us from the genuine process that wants to unfold. And so we really need to let go of that competitive side and allow ourselves to be present and connect and receive from others too, instead of being the strong one that's holding space for everyone else. The third personality type here is survival adapted. So, trauma survivor, PTSD, complex trauma history. So, the survivors, the people that are strong, they're incredibly strong, but they're also quite vulnerable. And they're strong because they've gone through incredible challenges in their life and they've made it this far. And their needs are for choice, for being able to control, to feel safe, for ease and titration. So, why that's so important here? So, we're talking about trauma informed care very much here, is because often when people go through trauma, they lose their sense of empowerment, they lose their right to make a choice. If they were abused, dominated, things like that, they can lose that sense of having the right to choose. They're very sensitive to being in control because obviously, when they were abused, they felt out of control and they need to feel safe to come back home and to connect again. And so they need to learn an ease and what's known as titration in emotional healing, which means slowing the process down and diluting it so that it doesn't get overwhelming because these people carrying a lot of heavy trauma. And so this is the problem when you just throw them into a group breathwork session. They can easily get overactivated and flooded and then end up finding that experience traumatic in itself. So we want to just back things off, ease them down, and give them the self-regulation resources to be able to integrate the emotional material that gets activated in breath work without getting emotionally flooded. So, chronic activation, then anxiety, ADHD, hypervigilance, burnout. There's probably a bit of this in all of us, but the needs for these people that are chronically on the go, drinking 5,000 cups of coffee a day, doing 10,000 things at the same time, is grounding. Need to come back in the body and into the present moment, be here now, and learn rhythm, learn to flow, not let go of pushing. And what helps them in the breath, and we have different breathing practice for these different personalities as well, is a longer exhale because that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the relax and digest aspect. So I'm going to show you in a little while, we have different breathing patterns for different nervous system states. And then the people that are in chronic shutdown. So these are people feeling depressed, numb, frozen, and dissociated. So what they need is gentle activation. So they need to learn how to bring their energy back online and bringing it up at a level that they can integrate and stay present and connected to. And we encourage them to develop curiosity and connecting all the time. Because remember, all of our heart center breath work is underpinned by a basic trust in the goodness of life and the natural tendency to peace and happiness and wholeness and aliveness. Right? So we don't need to do a whole lot of stuff. We just need to set up the context for that stuff to happen in by holding the right container for co-regulation. So, when you're working with trauma, it's worth understanding four different trauma responses and their needs. So, the fight, we talk about the fight response. People who've gone through trauma have a lot of anger, a lot of control issues, a lot of urgencies. Their greatest need is to feel safe to discharge. So we work with anger in a very direct way and wholesome way and safe way. We teach people how to express their anger in ways that are self-assertive, creative, and can deepen relationships. We do most of this in person at Passionately Alive, which is our residential program, but definitely anger is something that comes up in a lot of sessions and something that's taboo in our culture. So that means people have very little skills about how to express themselves and how to channel anger in healthy ways. The second trauma response is the flight, racing thoughts, restlessness, always on the go, running away from ourselves ultimately. And so our greatest need here is to slow down, to learn containment, to hold it, what we're feeling, what the intensity of the emotions is, and to get into rhythm. How do you deal with this in a group? Um, uh, Slowly is holy and safety always first. So we have, whenever we do a group breathwork session, we have lots of facilitators, and often we actually have equal number of participants and facilitators. And we never do group breathing where everybody's breathing at the same time. We always split the group in half. So one half is sitting with a partner who's going through the breathwork. So there's always someone there for them. And we're supervising and calibrating the breathing practice to suit that individual. So when I do group breathwork sessions, I'm always roving around. Online, we do the sessions very, very gently, and that helps to make it safe and helps people not to get overwhelmed and flooded by it. I hope that helps. The third trauma response, freezing, stillness, holding the breath, going blank. They need to start to tune in to their body, the tiny movements in the body to practice feeling safe and safety happens largely through connection and to always have choice. Right? So we need to freezing in the body is like massive amounts of fear that have numbed us out. And so sometimes we talk about in emotional circles defrosting, putting them on the defrost cycle. When we're frozen, when our body is in a state of shock and it's gone frozen, it's gone numb, what they need to do is learn to breathe into the body and start to feel that numbness and the shock. And as they feel it, it starts to soften and open, and the energy comes back online and starts to move again. And we do that, all of this really through, well, particularly the freezing one and the float one, is slowing the breath down. And then the last trauma response is fawning, which means overagreeing and appeasing and pleasing, right? And so what these people need is they need to learn boundaries, reclaim their voice, self-connection. So they need to come home and become more connected to their own truth. This was a big one for me. Also, I was a pleaser before I did breath work, particularly before I started to do anger work. And I started to claim my own boundaries and my voice and find out who I was and started living the life that I wanted to live instead of trying to make everybody else happy, which never worked. Because happiness is an inside job and no one can make anyone else happy, actually. And that definitely wasn't making me happy. So that was a journey of coming home and finding out and connecting more deeply to who I was, which happens through introspection of being more in your body and tuning in and being more connected to the feedback that's coming through the body instead of like just overriding that to be there, to be pleasing, agreeable, to help everybody to get what they want, everybody else that is. Instead, starting to be more in touch with the feedback that's going, this doesn't actually work for me now. This isn't actually what I want to be doing. And then finding the voice to start to voice that. And this isn't what I was expecting we were going to be doing, and things like that. That happens naturally as people get more present and connected to themselves. So, in the polyvagal area, which is working with the autonomic nervous system, Stephen Porges is a legend and he's brought this polyvagal theory in. And so, we're looking here at the different autonomic nervous system states that our clients can be in. And the best one is central vagal. This is the one that we want to live in. It's the one we want to have our sessions in. We have our clients in where we feel safe and connected and socially connected, present, playful, and creative. Right? And then on the sympathetic side of that, which is the fight or flight activated state of hypervigilance, that's we're in mobilization. And then the third state is what's known as dorsal vagal, which is the frozen, freeze and fawn states, right? So going numb and shutting down on the nervous system, right? So starting to look at our clients and going, are they in ventral vagal? Are they in that healthy balance in the middle? All right. So where are they now? So instead of asking what's wrong with them, we ask where's their nervous system now? So if they're in dorsal shutdown, they're going to be shut down, disconnected, numb, and flat. If they're in ventral safety and connection, calm, present, connected, flow, energized, green lights all along. So we're rocking here. So we just keep going with how we're going if our clients are there or we're there. And if somebody is over activated, then they're going to be in overstimulation and on the edge of overwhelm in that sympathetic nervous system, right? So building a base of understanding through this. Now, this is a continuum that we read moment to moment through monitoring their breath, their eye contact, their voice, their skin color, tension in their body, and the quality of their presence. So this is in constant flux. It's never constant. It's always changing. And so there's no one starting point here. And in fact, what we're working with is what's become known as the window of tolerance. And basically, that window of tolerance is about keeping our clients in that ventral vagal regulated state. And sometimes they'll reach the top edge of that when they start to get activated and they start becoming hyper aroused. And sometimes they might be in hypo arousal where they're in that shutdown state, right? So we want to think of if they're getting overactivated, we want to calm them down, help them to get bigger than the sensations and integrate them by slowing the breath and different practices that I'll come to in a sec. And if they're kind of numb, disconnected, detached, we need to actually speed the breath up and activate it a bit more so they start to bring their feelings online. Because remember, the breathing, the superpower of the breath, it brings us in the present and then energizes us and it creates flow. So hyper-aroused without pushing and thrashing around with it, because pushing creates resistance, we just need to bring the breath up. So in a breathwork session, if somebody's not really feeling very much, they probably need to breathe a little bit more activated, right? So yeah, so the role's not to force the transformation, it's to gently help the client return to and widen their window of tolerance. So what that means is The more that you practice being present in your body and processing your emotions, the more comfortable you actually get with more intense emotions. So that window of tolerance expands so that you can experience more intense anger and stay self-regulated, more intense fear, you can do scarier things and stay present, connected, and you can allow yourself to feel more depth of sadness and grief as well as love and joy and happiness as well. So there's that whole range really expands as we learn how to be present and regulate our breath and our emotions. Um, so what we're doing is we're choosing the appropriate breath for the state that the client's in, right? So if they're in panic, we downregulate. If they're in anxiety, we ground them. If they're in a hypervigilance, we slow the breath and connect it. If they're freezing, we're gently mobilizing. If they're in depression, we want to gradually energize them. And if they're in flow, they're going green lights, then we want to help them to keep on going in that direction and keep on opening. And if they're a high performer, we want to take the foot off the gas a little and practice surrendering as well. Right. So these are some ways that we calibrate these different states. Yes, we can be angry and within our window of tolerance. I'm probably showing my age, but I was always amazed that Bob Hawke, one of our prime ministers, used to get incredibly angry in Parliament and make perfect, coherent sense. Mostly when I get angry, my vocabulary goes down to two-word sentences. But if you practice getting angry and work with your anger in a healthy way, you actually raise that window of tolerance, and that allows you to stay clear and cognitive and functional at greater levels of intensity of anger. So you can be really, really angry and still make sense. So, yes, the answer is that. So, there's a whole range of breathing styles that we can choose from depending upon where our clients are at. And they range from sympathetic through coherent states to sympathetic, right? So, in the parasympathetic level, we're talking about well-being practices where we're looking to raise carbon dioxide levels, which helps people to heal and regenerate and actually lowers anxiety, even though when you're practicing the minimal breathing, breath holding exercises, it does induce some anxiety, but it's resetting, recalibrating the pineal gland in your brain to be able to tolerate that for greater well-being. And unfortunately, this is outside of the scope of our session tonight, but I just want to say, like, there's a whole toolbox of different breathing practices that you can draw on to meet your client where they're actually at. So calming, slowing breathing increases oxytocin, and oxytocin is the love bonding hormone that activates that parasympathetic nervous system. So this is like classic meditation breathing, and you would do this if your client was getting overactivated and you want to bring them back into that window of tolerance, then you start activating a calming breathing. We have 12 different breathing techniques that fit into these five different areas. In the middle is the heart coherent breathing, and this is one of the most popular and amazing breathing practices that we teach in the community of the heart-centered breathwork meditations. And this is the ultimate state that we want to live in our everyday life. And the hormone that activates is serotonin, which is the happy hormone. You love that one. And then, when we're doing a breathwork session, we're going to get people into a relaxed, open flowing state, which we call connected breathing. And there's different patterns in that. Start to activate some endorphins, some of that runner's high kind of energy that people feel really elated by and love about breathwork, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, in the sympathetic nervous system activation, is the peak aliveness breathing practices that kind of Wim Hof has become famous for. Holotropic breath work uses a lot where we're breathing. We have different breathing. Our wow breathing is in this area. So we want to bring the energy up and open people up and bring them alive, basically. Okay. But the point in this is you've got to choose the right practice for the right moment, for the right emotional state and the right nervous system state, right? And so there's a wisdom involved in doing this. So, as I said right at the start, one of the takeaways from this session, I hope you get, is we have to continually recalibrate. So we're not just giving our clients or even ourselves, if you're going through your own process, the same breathing practice, right? And, even in meditation, I find I'll use like a steady 4-4 breathing practice to start to anchor me into the present. And then I will come through connected breathing to come into my body, process emotion. And then I will start to go into more the heart state breath work to connect more deeply inside. So, as facilitators, we're always asking ourselves, what am I noticing? Does the breathing still match the nervous system state that they're in? So we're looking at their breathing. Sometimes we're breathing with them to become synchronized there. What's happening with their eyes? One of the common things that happens in breathwork is people start to flutter in their eyes, and that means there's REM activity, and that's a sign that they're visualizing or they're dreaming something. And so we don't speak when people have got REM activity happening. Listening to their voice, is it strong? Is it weak? Is it quivering? What does their voice sound like? The skin color I mentioned, we're monitoring that. Like if somebody is disconnecting from their body and becoming absent in the process, they'll likely go pale on their skin. And if they, if they're dealing with something that's embarrassing, they'll go flushed, red, and so on and so on. So we're using the feedback that we can see to give us useful feedback to know what we should be doing with the breath, how we should guide it. Physical tension, so they might tell us they've got some pain happening somewhere, and so we're working with that. Quality of their presence. Are they actually here now? Are they drifting off somewhere else? Um, how are they handling this emotional intensity? Right? Have they got a capacity to integrate what's coming up for them? And I mentioned this earlier on, but one of the things that we really important to do when we're doing emotional healing is give people the skills to be able to regulate themselves and increase that window of tolerance so that they can feel comfortable with greater levels of emotional intensity, right? And they can heal into more intense trauma then. Are they connected? There's another thing that we're looking at. So these are the kinds of things that we're using to recalibrate a breathwork session as we're going through it. Um, so we're constantly in flow with that. So coming towards the end, so kind of like a bit of a summary here, is when we've got a client, we want to know what their history is. We want to understand that person. Who are they? Why are they here? Then we're going to evaluate the nervous system state that they're in, right? Dorsal vagal, um, regulated, or sympathetic nervous system activated. Uh, Assessing their capacity, right? So I think a big mistake that sometimes we make is we just want to take our clients in as deep as we can and give them a wow experience, but they don't always have the resources to be able to process that intensity. So we need to be aware of that capacity. Um, um, so yeah, so I'm just thinking about people that have been in that way, without naming anybody else. So, but there's a process going on, and then we recommend and respond the appropriate breathwork pattern for that situation, and then we're tracking, right? We're observing and learning and recalibrating as we're going. So this is not a straight line process; it's a circular process that's going on all the time. We're taking all these things into consideration. So there's a fair chance that you're feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. So I recommend you take a breath, first of all. And you might be going, my God, how am I going to remember all this? This is my greatest fear for you is that I'm just overwhelmed you with a whole lot of stuff to try and take in. So hopefully that's not the case. So tell me if it's not. uh, um, this is recorded, so you can actually come back and listen to this. We are planning to do an implementation session for this where we'll go into this at the next level. Um, but essentially, the best session. Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, it's the first time I've run this, so I don't know how it's landing. So I appreciate feedback. Um, Essentially, though, to round this off, this process of calibration ultimately is not a cognitive process. This is not about learning more techniques, learning more information. It's about becoming more aware of how we're relating and where our clients and our partner and ourselves is actually at on those different areas. So it's about intuitioning the appropriate guidance during the session, right? So your intuition is informed by your knowledge, right? And so that comes from being professionally trained. That's where I mentioned about the cowboys at the start. Okay, so what I teach, is the culmination of over 30 years of doing sessions. I've done over 10,000 breathwork sessions with clients and the intense session, 2 hour sessions, right? Most of those. Um, so we also learn this. If you're feeling like, if you're just a student here, one of my recent graduates are going, the first advice I'd give to you, start practicing the techniques in your own life, right? So they're part of you, they're familiar with you, and then you'll find you know them intuitively, and you will just have worked out when your clients in different states how to guide them in healthy ways. So come and do a professional training if you're thinking of becoming a breathwork practitioner. Don't just do a Udemy course. Don't just do somebody Kellogg's cornflakes course who doesn't really know what they're doing, but they get high on breathwork and they want to smash it out. Do something that's really grounded and professional, somebody who's registered with national associations and has got credibility behind them. So just to finish off, just a reminder of things that are coming up. If you've loved this session and you want to stay connected and do more, we have the Lions Gate happening on Saturday night. That's our manifestation session to make the second half of the year the best ever. And we have a 1 day in-person breakthrough session, core clearing day on the 16th of August, coming up in like 10 days time, not this Sunday, but the one after. Our next core clearing training is the 12th and 13th of September. Love to hear the feedback. So thank you everybody for taking the time to feedback. I'd love to hear any feedback. It'd be helpful. And a notice to those in our community that we're actually increasing the intensity of service that we offer by offering a mentoring club on the first Tuesday night of the month, where you'll be able to come along, swap sessions with people. I'm running that. You get direct access to me to ask questions and get guidance. And I can support you on really bringing breathwork to the world, which is my mission and purpose. And so if you're interested, download a prospectus or a career guide and book a complimentary session. Come along and let's meet and have a chat. That'd be awesome. So remember to meet your clients where they're at, and that you are your own client, really, aren't you? So meet yourself where you're at. Be kind and gentle with yourself. When you don't feel like pushing, just back off and be kind and gentle and relax. So love to have you with us for the next leg of the journey. And thank you again for joining us here. I love to hear the feedback. Thanks for all the appreciation that's coming in the chat. I'll download the chat and read through it later. So thank you and blessings. And with that, I'll stop the recording.